Max Verstappen is winning the 2025 Formula 1 World Championship. Who would have thought that I or anyone would have been saying that after the summer break? But the championship situation has completely flipped on its head, and Max is now looking imperious as he chases down Norris and Piastri in the title fight. In the space of 4 races, he's gone from absolutely having no chance whatsoever of retaining his crown to now looking the clear favourite, even if he does remain a good chunk of points behind Piastri in the standings. Verstappen could not have been more honest about his and Red Bull's title prospects back in Hungary, when he said that it would even be difficult to win races, let alone fight for a title, and yet he's managed to prove himself wrong and work his way back into contention. So after a pretty much flawless weekend in Austin, Max has reduced the deficit by 23 points, with 5 races and 2 sprints remaining in the season. Can he really do the unthinkable and come from more than 100 points behind to win his 5th title in a row? I think he can, and here's why. Verstappen actually hasn't led the championship at any point this season, and the gap that he's faced with the 2 McLarens has kind of fluctuated across the year depending on McLaren's form. He was right in the thick of it in the opening phase of the season. He was right there with the McLarens and pushing them hard, and in the opening 8 races it was only really Miami where he lost a lot of ground. He lost 20 points there. Where the championship looked as though it was going to become a 2-horse race between both McLarens was the 9th round of the season in Spain, and that's where Verstappen, who was fighting for a podium finish for most of the Grand Prix, then deliberately hit Russell and was handed a time penalty that dropped him down the order to 10th place. So he lost around 9 to 11 points that day. That really opened up the gap quite considerably to the McLarens, and they were in a really strong phase at that point in the season, and they clearly had the fastest package at that point. So it looked as though Max was going to have quite a challenge on his hands to try and stay in contention. To put into context, Verstappen began the European season at Imola 22 points behind the championship leader, and that grew to 94 points by the final European race at Monza, where of course Verstappen won. So that is more than a 70-point jump. But now the tables are turning, because it's McLaren who now look as though they are on the back foot and Red Bull are on the rampage. It's a complete reversal of fortune that has allowed Max to work his way back into contention, and he's now the closest he's been to the championship lead since the Spanish Grand Prix. What's been noticeable is that Red Bull have been able to work on the issues that they had with their car, and they've now really been able to find a sweet spot that has given Verstappen this newfound confidence that he had been looking for a lot of the season. And ironically, at the same time, McLaren's dominance has just vanished. Austin was the 4th race in succession that McLaren has not won. Their last win came at the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, and that weekend they had been in a completely different league to anyone. They were so much quicker than all of their competitors, but they now look as though that they're in freefall, and the pressure is just building race by race, and McLaren is open about the fact that they consider Max a title threat. It's just that it's becoming too much of a reality for their liking. Mistakes are creeping in more and more. You really do notice that McLaren are making more errors than they were in the beginning of the season. And what's noticeable also is that previously, when they've had slow pit stops at recent races, they've been fortunate that they've had a big enough gap to the rest that it hasn't really cost them. But now they can't afford to make these kind of mistakes for the rest of the season. They have to be perfect. It's not just the team though. The drivers have also paid the price for the mistakes that they've made across the season. Lando, for instance, his qualifying has really been quite a difficult part of his year. It's where he's really lacked consistency. He's been overdriving the car in those crucial moments in Q3 where he really needed to pull a lap out of the bag. But he also hasn't shown enough aggression. He's been too cautious in wheel-to-wheel battles, but he also has been unlucky. Look at Zandvoort, where he was running second and retired through mechanical failure. Oscar, on the other hand, in my opinion, I think he was completely flawless up until the uncharacteristic weekend that he had in Baku when he crashed in qualifying and the race. And it feels as though things have gone downhill from there on, because Singapore was a difficult weekend for him. Then there were more struggles in Austin with his poor judgment that led to the collision with Norris during the sprint race at the first corner, and then he was completely off the pace in qualifying and the race. It just feels in this part of the season he's had this dip, and it maybe is the pressure of fighting for a Formula 1 World Championship has maybe got to him. At the same time, Max's confidence is just building, and his season is really beginning to gain momentum. You can see that gap getting smaller and smaller, and he and the car are in a really nice place where he doesn't absolutely have to wring its neck. He can just drive it more to his liking. I think also mentally he's in a much better position than both Norris and Piastri. He's not dwelling on the standings. He's not too bothered about what the situation is. I don't think he cares too much if he's able to pull off this comeback or not. In saying that, Verstappen did for the first time declare himself in the fight for the championship after his win at COTA, so he is starting to believe that he and Red Bull could compete for this world title, and complete the comeback of all comebacks. Sometimes you do actually prefer being the hunter than the hunted, and it's not a position that Max is used to being in, because he's either been dominant like he was in 2022 and 2023, or he was out front with his rival chasing him like he was in 2021 and 2024. McLaren are now looking dangerously over their shoulders. You can really feel that this championship is just beginning to slip away from them. They really need to regroup and just focus on themselves. I think that's what the problem is, that they're focused too much on Max. All this talk around papaya rules and repercussions for the drivers if they end up colliding, I think it's just an unwanted distraction for them, and I think it has actually played a part in this dip in form. They just need to forget all of this nonsense and just go out and race. The enemy is Max, not each other. And you can absolutely forget a scenario where McLaren choose to favour one driver over the other in the remaining races. It's too close between them. They can't afford to do that. It's going to be like 2007, where they give both drivers equal opportunity to win the championship to the final race. The only thing that can stop Max now is if he's involved in a collision or if reliability problems creep in. Looking at the remaining circuits on the calendar, I don't think any of them are going to be particularly weak for Red Bull, and certainly not for Max, because he's won at all of them. So there's not really one that jumps out as a particularly weak track. The good news for McLaren is that the title is still in their hands. If Piastri finishes second to Max at all of the races, including the sprints, he would win the championship by 3 points. But looking at how ominous Verstappen's form is and Piastri struggles, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that if McLaren are able to return to winning ways and they can stop Verstappen's momentum, I think Max will look back at Spain as really the moment that cost him a fifth world title, especially if he loses out on the championship by 11 points or less. But speaking of momentum, it is firmly in the Verstappen camp, and my gut feeling is that he's going to overturn this deficit and make it 5 in a row. And I think that that would make this title not only his best, but one of the greatest title wins in Formula 1 history. Well, there you are guys, that is it for today's video. Don't forget to like the video, and if you are new around here, please do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.